Hello everyone, Floyd Zuber here, and I want to talk about what happened with the Boeing company and its recent infestation of malfunctions in their aircraft. I want to see how that kind of thinking works on the federal and state level, especially in Virginia. For decades at least, the Republican mantra has been about deregulation and making things better for business. It's that kind of thinking that persists throughout its ideology. I keep hearing that incessant noise squawked constantly, even after a disaster that could have and should have been prevented. The current ongoing crisis is the Boeing fiasco. You know, it's much more than a simple fiasco. What do you call it when airplane parts fall off the plane in flight? What do you call it when airplane equipment decides to operate or not operate on its own, just like in the movie Maximum Overdrive? Or toilet contents overflowing into the cabin. Boeing might call it an interesting experience. I call it multiple unnecessary deaths waiting to happen. All these things indicate a systemic problem. Then the obvious question is, why are these things happening that endanger the lives of the flying public? The obvious and visible answer is the executive leadership at Boeing. The problem is that the questions never go beyond that. You hardly hear anyone asking how it is that Boeing executives are allowed to run the company without regard for public safety. And let's be clear, public safety is an issue. It should be an issue. It should be an issue for every passenger who wants to get from here to there and back again in one piece. It should be an issue for all the crew members who have to deal with the stress of knowing that it might be their last day on the job. By the way, here's your pink slip. When the disaster eventually happens, the public only then starts to question why the government did nothing to prevent it. No one I can think of asks how the government is complicit in any of these events. So let's talk about that and see if we can come up with a reasonable answer. First, it should be clear that the process problems at Boeing are system-wide. It may not have manifested itself with other manufacturers yet. These anomalies are similar to the management blind spots that resulted in the Challenger disaster. There were continual indicators that no one paid any attention to. People disremember how the Challenger disaster happened, but thanks to the analytical thinking of Nobel physicist Richard Feynman, the Rogers Commission concluded that management inattention to detail was a significant contributor to the explosion. Boeing seems to be no different in that respect. Second, the contributing factor to corporate apathy is the lack of enforcement mechanisms to ensure the safety of the flying public. How is this possible? Boeing and other corporate titans use their method of creative financing to convince the government, mostly Republican legislators, to use legislation to eliminate public safety standards and requirements in the name of helping business. Public be damned. If re-legislation doesn't work, they can always find enough Republicans to restrict financing for enforcement of those standards and requirements. It's their strategy to cripple the workings of the government by not subsidizing and providing services to the taxpayers under the guise of less government is better all around. Unfortunately, that strategy is working too often and too well. I'm waiting for the informed electorate to catch up to that before boarding the next Boeing 737. So far, we've been talking at the federal level, but there is the trickle-down effect that Republicans are so fond of. Going to the state level, let's take a look at what Glenn Bumpkin, Virginia's governor, is doing using similar tactics, but for a different reason. He's decided to tank the state certification requirements for teachers. That's in conjunction with perverting Virginia's education system by making false claims that critical race theory is being taught to school children as a method of indoctrination into woke policies. He never bothered to find out or explain that the concept of critical race theory is too complex to teach, except in college. And even there, it would be minimally at the undergraduate level. To help his authoritarian efforts, he enlisted the cooperation of parental co-conspirators to contribute to his snitch line against teachers. Bumpkin and all his Republicans are uninterested in the potential damage that the lack of well-established education will inflict on our children. What does he care? Just loosen the requirements. And there's another piece of work in Virginia that goes by the name of Nick Freitas. Recently, he made a big splash with House Bill 759 that allows the exposure of children to fake pops and other assorted diabetes-inducing products. There was even a big celebration in Richmond where Bumpkin signed off on the bill and handed out fake pops to unsuspecting child victims. It's these same kids that will lose their education to the Republicans who are willing to subject them to the risk of acquiring adult diabetes and obesity. Of course, when these kids need treatment for that diabetes and related ailments as a result of these internal ingestible confections, no health care for you. The reason for denying that health care is a very simple pre-existing condition. Republicans. Deregulation and providing a safety net for business instead of taxpayers is a common theme in Republican circles. They seem to think that they have an immunity to the plagues they enjoy passing on to others. They're also the first ones to whine when it happens to them. Then they wonder what the government was doing to protect them. And the Republican priorities are Boeing, racism against critical race theory, and fake pops. It's just that damn pre-existing condition, Republicans. Okay, folks. Evidently we have an update. Another Boeing 737 had to be diverted because a dog shit in the aisle. But no need to worry. We know who should take care of this one. Nick Freitas. And why?